Thank you for tuning in to Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen. We're with comic Sharon Spell. Sharon Spell, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm doing fine because I have Sharon Spell on the Skype.
Hello. Glad to be here on Skype.
Oh, yeah, and I have her all across my social platforms. I have Sharon Spell on Instagram and Twitter, and she's SharonSpell.com.
Yeah.
And she's just rocking the festival circuit, like even during a pandemic. She's got her script has been accepted to 4 fucking festivals. So I want to hear the premise of this fucking thing that's taking the film festival circuit by storm, even during a pandemic. It's got to be something related to death and grieving.
Well, if you know me, you know my brand, and it's death and grieving.
Yes, I expect nothing less than from Sharon Spell, death and grieving. Well, yeah, what's the script that's just taking the festival circuit by storm?
Well, it's called You're Doing Great, and it's based on one woman show that I wrote based on my experience of my parents passing away. And this happened in 2011. They died 18 days apart from separate causes.
Oh my God.
And I went home to Mississippi twice in a month, as it turned out, to bury my parents. And then I came
and you're back. Like, I should have just stayed home, right?
I mean,
you're like, that's a shitty joke, Brian. Thanks a lot.
No, I'm yes-anding your shitty jokes. So.
Oh, good. Like a true comedian.
I'm running toward the danger. But my mom fell into a coma, and then my mom had diabetes and my dad had Parkinson's. And that summer, like, their long-term illnesses had taken a turn. Like, they had been fine, quote unquote, fine, managing, but like they weren't really fine, but they were doing what they could. And that summer, their illnesses took a turn, and when they passed, it was like rapid succession. They had been married for 53 years, and mother fell into a coma related to her diabetes, and then the next day, Daddy had a seizure, and he had been treated that summer for Parkinson's-related dementia. And after he had that seizure, the hospital, the doctor decided to do an MRI at the hospital, and they found that he had brain tumors, not dementia. And so he came home for hospice. I came home to see mother in a coma and see Daddy in hospice. And I'm still in denial at this point because they had been fine for so long. Not
fine and in love for 50 years, chugging along with a happy marriage.
Like, let's put in love on the table. Let's put a pin.
yeah, 50 years anyway. I don't know about love, but 50 years.
The long-term, like, love of, like, I'm not leaving. Like, they had a joke, like, whoever leaves first is taking the kids, because they had 4 kids. Whoever leaves is taking the kids first. So
they don't leave because you have to take the kids.
Yeah, so they never left. So we were all 4 of us
take care of 4 kids by myself, right?
See?
Except Sharon. I want Sharon. She's funny.
Oh yeah, but they didn't know that till a lot later. No, so, my whole family is funny. So I had to do what I could to get my jokes in.
And but so the script kind of, you were doing that as a one-woman show, and now it's a script that's just rocking the festivals.
Yeah, like I did what most of us do, and just like sublimate our pain and make it into jokes. I mean, that's how we cope. Most of us who are comedians, we cope with our sense of humor. And so yeah, it's like the first set I did. Do you know Ed Sullivan on Acid, the show that's been going? Yeah. Pat O'Shea started it, and Calvin Cato runs it now. But I was already booked to be on that show when I got back in September, and I decided to just go. And like, I got there, and I'm like crying, and
no, I think Chrissy Mary did the same fucking thing.
Oh,
and it's
yeah?
Like, and then afterwards, you're like, can't I give myself a single fucking day to grieve?
Well, but
Yeah, how'd the set go first? Yeah.
it went great because I just like I couldn't do any of my old jokes, and like I got there and I was crying and I told Pat what happened. He said, "You don't have to be here," and I just said, "I don't know where else to be," you know?
Oh, the
Like this,
comedian in you. Wow.
these are my people, and this is
Uh,
like my church in a way, and like
yeah.
community, and so when I got up and I just told the truth around, the culture of funerals and grief and death and dying, and like how like casseroles just started showing up at the house and you didn't know where they came from, and I ate more fried chicken that month than I've ever eaten in my whole life, and
Uh, and you're
uh,
like, I didn't know I knew this many good cooks.
yes, yes, and just like the woman who, like, after mother came home after she never came out of her coma and she came home for hospice, and like there was one day that my sister came downstairs and there was a stranger standing over our mother pushing on her saying, "Ruth, wake up. I called you 2 weeks ago and nobody returned my phone call."
Who the fuck was that person?
We didn't know.
Wow.
Uh,
I also like the fact that you could say it's supernatural. You could be like, that was God saying that he almost took her 2 weeks ago.
why didn't God return the phone call like
Oh
that?
yeah, that's funny.
So I got up and just shared that, and sharing the laughs with people helped me take a step forward. And probably Chrissy felt something similar. Like, you need to find some way to step forward. Because, like, for me, I got back to my apartment in Astoria after 2 funerals in a month, and I fell in my bed. I never want to get out again because I just felt
Yeah.
so overwhelmed and so defeated. It's like such a failure because I had such a timeline for success set up in my head of, like, this is
That
going to
didn't
happen, this
include parents'
happen,
death, huh?
right? And then like I'm going to get a TV show, and then I'll give my mother something to not shut up about because she'll be bragging, like.
Yeah.
And so it was not just the death of my parents, but the death of that dream of my success with my
Oh,
parents and the dream of sharing things with him. Like, anytime, like, since then, and it comes and goes with intensity, but like if I see people's parents come to see them, it kills me a little bit, just a
oh,
little bit. But it's okay because like I love that they have that, and I appreciate it. Like, but it's a little bit of like when you break up and you see couples in love, it's like that, but with parents. Like, because like it's like the thing that really killed me when I came back to the city was like seeing new parents with their like toddler or baby infant children, like being sweet with them. It just like, oh, drag the dive, dig the knife in deeper.
because you're
Just
like, at one point, my parents were that sweet with me.
at one point,
Yeah.
yes, were,
But that's so
but
funny. Like you're like, oh, comedians' parents don't often go to the show, so it doesn't happen too often. You're like,
it,
I'm not
when it
crushed too
happened,
often.
yeah,
Comedians' parents don't love them that much.
but when
They've
it
been to one show, but not the 10th show.
well, yes, but they do come to improviser shows. Funny enough, so
Yeah, because
so
you do it all, and it's like, yeah, how did you kind of turn that show into something that was what, movie length? The script, I
it
presume,
is.
is it was a short film or a
It's a
long film or a
TV
TV show?
pilot. It's a TV
Ah,
pilot. So I've taken the world that I've written about the experience, and I turned it into a one person show. And in this pilot and in the series, I've set up character Sharon to go home to face uh, the deaths of her parents, but then she ends up moving back to Mississippi.
and she's a comedian.
Yes.
Is she gonna do a comedy in Mississippi?
Yeah, we'll find out.
Ah. Yeah, how do you leave the pilot? Like, yeah, what avenues can it go to? Is it just a funny person who's kind of coping with, not only the death of her parents, but moving from a big city with all, ample opportunity to
With
Mississippi?
to Mississippi, and then she's a medium-sized fish in a small pond again.
Yeah.
And so Hattiesburg is where I'm from, and Todd Berry has a road journal called "Thank You for Coming to Hattiesburg,"
Okay.
and it's based on his experiences of going to small like college towns, and that's what Hattiesburg is.
Ah,
And they do get like touring comics stopping there because it's not far from New Orleans, the Gulf Coast. And so when people are doing road work, they can get gigs in Hattiesburg and
okay.
like stop over. So there are opportunities for storylines that way. There are opportunities for
So you're like you open for them, and they bring you stories from the big city.
that, and there's a lot going on in Mississippi, like politically, culturally, right
Ah,
now, because the state flag
yeah.
is finally, they're taking the Confederate battle flag out, and there's a whole, like, they're still deciding on what the design is
And does
with
that make
that.
its way into a pilot? Like, did that happen at such a point where you can
No,
kind of
but
reference
it,
that at all in your script?
it makes it into a 5 season story arc because there's plenty of room for. This is the thing, like when I've just pitched the idea to people, they ask like, well, what else can happen?
Yeah.
Well, a lot can happen, and I
Yeah,
have.
now after Black Lives Matter and racial protest across the country and Confederate flags, I mean, there's a lot to explore now.
There's that. There's healthcare. Mississippi is dead last in a lot of like important statistics for
Yeah,
states.
the
Uh,
diabetes was part of the story.
Number one. Uh, but I ate as much fried chicken in that month as I have at any time. And like, oh, that wasn't just for grief. That was just Tuesday. Okay, well, I didn't know. I did though. I did. I
I
totally
love that.
did.
I love that. No, that's just Tuesday. That's
Yeah,
kind of how the diabetes thing happened.
that's how. But sometimes it's hereditary, and sometimes you just have it. So,
Yeah.
uh, but there are opportunities for other storylines, and it's also like it's a family. It's a it's a 30-minute comedy, but I wouldn't say a sitcom so much as like a series, more like Arrested Development meets like 6 Feet Under,
Okay.
with a big flavor of Rami. Like I love how Rami put. Have you seen his show?
No, not yet. Supposed
Highly
to be good
recommend.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very good. He takes elements of his real life and they put it into this 30-minute format, and it's funny, but it's also like very touching and very poignant and hard-hitting and gross sometimes and like, but you kind of root for him. And so I have been sober about 6.5 years now.
Okay.
And at the time that my parents died, I was not sober at all. And I
So
had
that's
just
more. That's another opportunity for a storyline or 10.
oh, so many. But I had just gone through a very painful divorce and was living in New York City, trying to make it, dealing with rejection, like
My
building it.
Lord.
Right, right.
You're saying all this stuff is actually true. You're saying that. I mean, I guess you never did move home, but you're saying in the script though,
In the script,
the true things are the fact that you were still drinking at the time, but you were also going through a divorce, which the drinking and the divorce thing were true.
the divorce happened that came through at the beginning of 2010. So like the year before, a year and
Okay.
a half before they passed away.
Okay.
So just like as I felt like I was getting my bearings from that, the two people who had turned into like my person after that, because like with most people in the relationships with parents, that ebbs and flows kind of, and like I turned to them for help as my marriage was ending, and they really became like my touchstones more than ever,
Yeah.
until they started like becoming more ill over the summer, and then they passed away. But then when they were gone and really gone, it made me just realize how very alone I was. And
Oh, you're saying your parents were your touchstone, through the divorce, and then
yeah,
they die. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, there's so much. And then because you're a divorcee at that point, you can find love again. There's 4,000 avenues. Great job. And I guess that leads me to the question. I mean, of course, you were going through this hellish hellscape that has all these avenues for hilarious storylines, but does the festival look out for that? Like in it, being admitted to all these festivals, are they looking at like, oh shit, this thing really has an opportunity to be successful because of all these storylines? Or is it festival politics or something like that? Like, do they look for this thing is going to be successful, or do they look at the script as well written?
I I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm kind of just throwing pasta at the wall. Is that the expression, to see what sticks?
Sure, but I mean, a lot of it's
Having,
sticking. A lot of it's sticking though. So that at some point you're like, I got some pretty
yeah,
sticky
and I'm
pasta.
just going to have that for dinner because it's already made, and I don't want to waste food because
Yeah, I'm glad it's on the wall because I can
it's
just put
still
it
good.
on my
The
plate
wall
now.
is clean. I don't walk on the wall. It's fine.
The wall is clean. I don't walk on the wall. Oh, that's fucking hilarious.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
and so do they look at just, oh, this thing is well written? Or I
what
mean,
I
in your case, they probably are like, first of all, it's well written. Second of all, this actually happens. Where, and third of all, there's about 4,000 avenues for where it could go,
I
and
don't.
we don't look bad politically for just kind of accepting a submission that has to do with race, etc.
But it can, like, it.
Yeah, yeah, meaning like it totally can have to do with race, and so of course that's one thing in its favor. Of course, if I were a festival, I'd be more likely to admit it for several reasons. One of which is it's going to deal with race.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
yeah, and it does. And I I don't know how different festivals make their selections, and I don't know that they think much beyond what they get on the page, because from the submission process and from seeing the other pieces that are accepted, I don't know that they have time to go through and think about so many other people's stuff.
yeah,
So what all I can do is be in charge of me and what I have. So what I'm using the festival circuit for is to get more eyes on the piece that could lead to legitimate, like, conversations about production,
yeah,
and have a pitch Bible put together. I have a 5 season story arc for the main character and some of the other characters. That's the thing I need to really push through and finish. But I know how Sharon's 5 season story arc goes.
right. And so I
Uh,
mean, these are things that you write down because at the first meeting of any sort of pitch, they might ask questions like, "All right, give me this what pitch Bible or whatever." Like
right.
these are things you've researched and you have to have ready in the
Yes.
event there's ever a first meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And another thing that I've learned is a lot of people go through festival circuit and nothing gets produced. And that's a reality of anything that we do in comedy. Like, you can that's kind of why like you said, you that I do it all, like improv, stand up, blah blah blah. But,
Yeah.
like, there's nothing of this is guaranteed. So my primary focus is to always have a project going and to always have fun with it. And this
Yeah.
is still very fun. It feels fruitful. And, like, if something becomes too hard and it's not easy and obvious, I put it down and come back to it later, because there's nothing
Okay.
wrong with that,
Yeah, absolutely. Because
you
there's a time
know?
for everything. Like there's might be a time that you're more equipped to tackle, some difficult subject matter or something. But I love the fact too. I mean, you're writing this, you're coming up with hilarious autobiographical jokes that even if it doesn't get picked up, you could just put in your stage show.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then would you put this on? Like I got Michelle Drozdick. She's a former guest, and she did a one man
Oh, I
show
know
about
her.
alcoholism. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
she's
then there's
great.
another one. Yeah, Julie Pinheiro is doing one about kind of the death of a loved one and grief and things. And she
Hmm,
did
hmm.
hers, I think, through Experimental Bitch, I think it's called. But like, so I think there's kind of a do it yourself thing, or maybe do it with help of grants or whatever. Like if this thing doesn't get picked up via the festival circuit, can we look forward to going to the pit or the pit loft or the striker stage and seeing Sharon Spell do this one person show?
Uh, as it is now, I would probably try to get a cast of characters, because, like, when I did do this as a one person storytelling show. And I'm glad that I did it, but as I did it, it was more like beginning, middle, end, true story.
Yeah.
And I relived my parents' deaths every time I did it. And I think
That
that,
sucks.
yeah, but I think it was necessary for a certain amount of time, but then it was
Okay.
also time, like, it didn't feel easy and obvious anymore, and it was time to put
Yeah.
that aside. But if I did this as a live stage show, I would want it to be cast with actors. I would hire a director, hire actors, and, like, make it into something that was more collaborative and alive with other people's input.
Yeah, because you probably have encountered enough actors over your time to know that, man, there's some people who could really fucking nail the words on the page, but also, I don't know, kind of add an additional layer of something. Like sometimes, people with comedic acting chops, or I suppose even dramatic acting chops could take your words and bring them to life in a way that maybe you couldn't if you were just reading them off the page.
And part of the project of this pilot, some of the intel I've gotten is to make a sizzle reel of some of the pages. And so a year ago this month, August, when we're recording this, I did take on a big project to hire a director, hire actors, and like a professional camera person, editor we recorded 6 pages of the 34 pages of the pilot script.
Okay.
And put that together for a promotional tool to accompany the pilot.
And how do you do that? Do you get other actors to read their parts?
Yes. And I do know, like, just from, like, I'm from Mississippi, and so people hear my accent, and I also pay attention to accents and where people are from. So the people that I got to play the Southerners are from Southern states.
Oh, good.
And just like told them, like, we're not country, we live in the city, but we are in the South, and they nailed it, you know.
Yeah. And were they comedians too?
Yeah, one is Kendall Ketchum, who played my sister. Jonathan Gregg is from Alabama. He's been on Showtime, and he was on High Maintenance.
Oh, cool.
If you've ever watched that, he was on the episode that takes place the day after the election. If you know it, you know. Do you know it?
No, but that sounds hilarious.
Okay.
That sounds hilarious. Especially was he delivering to the South? Is he always in New York City, the high maintenance guy?
No.
Where's he delivering to?
What do you mean delivering?
Well, high maintenance is the weed delivery guy, right?
Oh, no. He's one of the people getting delivered to. So
yeah, and so on high maintenance, though, is the weed delivery guy always based in New York City, or does he deliver nationwide?
So it's the same guy, but like the guy, Jonathan Gregg, plays a guy, like he's in a hotel scene.
Okay. So he's just like a Southern guy in the city or something?
No. He doesn't have an accent in this. I'm just saying, like, if you know this scene, you know it. If you don't know it, like, it's something to, yeah.
I gotta fire that shit out, because then I'm like, and what character is that in your thing?
He plays one of my brothers, and then Brian Foss plays the other brother, and Kendall plays my sister. Talia Robinson plays my best friend from there. The character is a combination of a bunch of people, and let's see, Darrell Hunt plays kind of like the Newman character at the bar.
It's kind of Newman character.
He's kind of like Newman meets Rhoda. Like, he's kind of jealous and hating, but also kind of endearing and sweet, and good. Yeah.
I gotta fire up the high maintenance thing, because I want to say that's Sharon Spell's brother in this script she's got coming out. But I love it so much. I love that you're taking just the awful fucking grief and turning it into 5 seasons of television at least. Sharon Spell. I mean, I know I follow you across social platforms. You're Sharon Spell at Twitter and Instagram, but also SharonSpell.com.
Yeah, that's right, Brian Koppen.
So, I can't wait to see this thing get made. Sharon Spell, thank you so much.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you, Brian.
Let's do it.